Ian, I'm Mike Manal from the Nerds of Color. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my volume and stuff. I'm doing all right. How are you? How are you,
Doing
sir?
great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you. I gotta say, I got into the first episode of Teacup not knowing anything about it. I hadn't read Stinger. I saw little bits of the Comic-Con panel, but other than that, it was just complete mystery. And I got sucked in. And I got
Oh, good.
every episode deeper and deeper and deeper. And it came to such a satisfying conclusion for the season that makes me so anticipate future stories and the continuation of this story. So my biggest question is, as someone who hasn't read Stinger, how did this project come to you? How did you read the book, and how did you get really started with just kind of creating this for Peacock and this, kind of visualizing it into live action and into this brilliant series?
Well, thank you for all the kind words. I'm glad that you're sucked in, and that makes me happy. That's what it's about. It's about people enjoying themselves watching this. How did I get involved? James Wan's company, Atomic Monster, came to me and they said, "Hey, we've got this book. We're wondering if you might be interested in adapting it." I knew their work, of course, and they knew me from having read some scripts of mine and having seen some things that I've been part of. Um, and I read the book, and the book is it's really big. It's set pieces, huge set pieces, explosions, dozens of characters, an entire town, all these different things going on. Uh, and I loved it. I loved it, but I thought there's something about it that speaks to me, but it spoke to me in a way that I wanted to turn the whole thing on its head. I wanted to take everything that was big and make it small and start from a very ground level, what's called a keyhole epic. We can only see a small amount of a very large story. The book feels like a big, tentpole, big budget movie. And since we're doing what we hope is a continuing series, um, we want to slowly trickle out information and go along with the characters for several seasons. So it can't be all big set pieces. And what I did was I kept the core idea, and I kept some of the things that I thought really worked well with that core family dynamic that you've seen in the series. Uh, and and then I kind of just let the story tell me what it wanted to do. And so what I did was I wrote a script and I said, okay, two things need to happen. James Wan and his company, they need to read it and they need to be excited about it. They read it, they were excited about it. The other thing that needed to happen was Robert McCammon, who wrote Stinger, needed to read it and he needed to understand what I'd done and he needed to sign off on it and be excited about it. And he did all those things. And then we were kind of off and running. So, uh, and then we ended up, we pitched it to a bunch of places, and Peacock was the most excited about it. And then you and I sat down to talk. No, then a lot of stuff happened. Does that
It,
answer your question?
it definitely does. And honestly,
Cool.
Peacock really was the right network for this because everything that Universal represents, especially when it comes to horror, I think was kind of the perfect it's the perfect forum to tell this story because you cannot tell a story like this without in just a 2 hour runtime like a movie. You needed a
Hmm.
series to kind of break it out because it's so multi-layered. You've got these characters that are going through this apocalyptic event, this issue, but there's so much personal stuff also lurking underneath the surface between them. And I thought that that was brilliant that you got to explore all of that because you can't just rush all of that in a movie. And I thought that that was
No.
that was brilliantly done and well served, both from yourself and from James's perspective too. So that was great. Um, it's kind of crazy because we're talking about the grounded level of the series, and that was one of the things that visually stuck out to me was this is an apocalyptic show there's an alien invasion. Hopefully people have seen the series, so spoiler alert if they haven't. But there's basically an alien invasion coming, and yet we don't need $200 million special effects to tell this story. We have great acting, and we have concepts as simple as actors breathing into other actors, to convey this idea, this invasion of the body snatchers paranoia sort of idea. So when you were putting together the script, how did you visualize all of this in terms of just kind of like how to convey something so big in a small, well, in a teacup, for lack of a better term, you know?
Uh, well, I think once I made the decision to make it, as I said, this sort of a keyhole epic, then you have uh, kind of storytelling rules, which are the audience doesn't know anything the characters don't know. And, I wanted to take out uh, the internet, television, phones, any sort of information coming from the outside world, because I think that would take away from it being grounded and take away from it being an emotional experience. And more than anything, I want this to be an emotional experience. That's why we're dropped right into the family dynamic. You know, there's not a lot of setup. Things just start happening. And you learn about the characters as you go along. The idea being you're going to know these characters very well, but it's going to take time. Much like if a neighbor shows up at your house and then they're stuck with you, you start to learn about who they are, but you're not given an introduction. And uh, so it was about that of keeping it okay. If the characters don't know this, then the audience doesn't know this. And when you start doing that and you start thinking, okay, we're keeping it a very grounded level, then to my mind, what they experience needs to be something that's grounded enough that even though it's impossible and even though it's extraterrestrial, supernatural, whatever you want to call it, impossible, that it's something that feels organic and something about I'm sure it had something to do with coming out of COVID. And if you're this close, if you're 6 feet, then you're fine. But if you're 4 feet, that it had to do with something that felt almost human,
Yeah.
almost kissing, but just a little bit. I was going to say fucked up, but I don't want to say
You could
fucked up,
say it.
but a little bit off center. You know what I mean? Something
Yeah.
a little strange, and someone coming in and opening their mouth and just staying there to me is it's a very arresting image. So that's and I think once just to kind of sum up, it's once I figured out that things wanted to be on a human level and they didn't have to do with technology and they didn't have to do with information and it's all about emotion and feeling something, then these things start to make sense and start to pop up uh, in my head and in the writers' heads in a way that you kind of learn how to. It's like you've learned how to ride the bike that is Teacup, and now the idea is go along with that momentum.
It was simple, it was effective, and from a narrative standpoint, you were clear. It was clear. We could understand what was kind of going on, even though we don't know what's going on. We understand as much as the characters do, even some of them who don't know. But we understand that things are transferring from one character to another without even knowing this world all that much. And
Yeah,
I thought that that was such a brilliant way to do it. But more than that, it was also super creepy because to your point, that's such a social and a protocol that we wouldn't do in society, getting that close to someone and breathing unless it was something that could be intimately, potentially romantic or nice, like kissing. But
yeah.
in this case, it's got this sinister undertone, this creepiness to it, and it's so effectively well done. It was such a good choice, and I love that.
Well, I
Um,
appreciate that. Thank you.
of course,
Makes me very
and
happy.
and yeah, of course. And this couldn't we couldn't sell any of this if the actors weren't fantastic. And that was one of the big things about this show that I was really anticipating about it was they had James Wan, but you also had Yvonne Strahovski, who was one of my favorites since Chuck, someone who could play vulnerable but also stoic and cold, potentially. Um, I would some would actually say stoic and cold. I would actually say strong very strong-willed. And you had Chask Spencer, who's fantastic in this, Scott Speedman. Most importantly, Caleb. Caleb is your secret weapon because that kid came out of nowhere and surprised the living crap out of me. So assembling this team, what was that like, and what decisions went into casting this amazing ensemble, especially Caleb, because that was just like mind blowing for me.
Uh, well, Scott and I had known each other for a while and wanted to work together. Um, so this kind of really dovetailed nicely with that. Um, Yvonne was suggested by the network, and I mean, I didn't think of her solely because she was on Handmaids, and it turned out that she had a break. But she took a little convincing. Like it was about she and I having a dynamic and spending some time talking about what we were trying to do. And she came on board. She'd read the first episode, but it really had to do with what you and I have been talking about, like keeping in this grounded emotional place. And Caleb was, as you can imagine, that was the most difficult role to cast, and we saw a lot of kids. And we'd actually, thank goodness I don't remember the kid's name, but we'd actually pretty much decided on a kid, and then we saw then for some reason I thought we were done, and then there were three more, and Caleb was one of them, and so he was literally, if not the last, one of the last three we saw, and the second we saw him, we're like, oh, that's him. And it's child actors. It's a hard thing to do because they don't have someone like Scott. He's got years of experience doing this and years of experience as being a human being. And I think Caleb's 10 now. How much did I know when I was 10 years old? But he's got that thing. He's got that thing where he just, once the cameras start rolling, he's there. And it's pretty special. And he's got to play two characters really. And I think he
Yes.
does a pretty fantastic job. Yeah.
That was so impressive. Honestly, Ian, I can talk to you so much all day, dissecting questions that I have at the end of this season and everything like that, but I don't want to spoil anything for the next season or for anyone watching. But phenomenal job. This to me is the next Stranger Things, in my opinion. And I
Oh, I
think
appreciate that.
people are going to discover this if they haven't already and just get sucked in episode after episode. So congratulations on this phenomenal series. Thank you for making it so great. And please give my regards to the cast, the crew, and everyone who honestly made one of the best surprises this season on streaming. So thank you guys so
Oh,
much.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I really appreciate
Of
that.
course.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
Ian.
talking to you.
The activist directors, comments and the lectures, fanboys, professional artists and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The hard knock life, comics, movies, and TV. Yeah, pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.